So good evening all. Today we'll be having one of the very important discussion from this particular area called as historiography. Historiography. And we'll be having a simple approach in which we'll be covering like what? The approach. How you should approach this particular topic, historiography. As well as we'll be learn one of the very important topic from this area as well. So based on this idea and based on this approach, definitely you will be able to learn all the subtopics under historiography for your future examination. Whether you are preparing for this season or after that season, whatever it is, historiography has its own significance in your learning process. So as part of our discussion, let me go through some of the very important basic thing first. For those who are beginning or beginners to this particular topic, historiography, I'll be having some of the very quick idea regarding what is this historiography is all about. For a few minutes, like say like 10 minutes, we'll be having some of the very basic information. Then we'll be jumping into one particular advanced learning as well. So as per your syllabus, you have to focus on these things. Like you have, let me use one annotation. You have to focus on the historical method, the research, methodology, and historiography. This is your unit 10. So as you guys know, dear students, you have totally 10 units for your paper 2. In history, there are totally 10 units, right? Out of this, 9 units are related to what? Totally Indian history, whether it is ancient India, medieval India, modern India, as well as contemporary Indian history, whatever it is. But after that, you have the 10th unit that is having some of the very important significance related to simply what we are saying, historiography. So in this historiography, actually syllabus is something very given as like something wide, but we should know some of the very important core topics, and we should also know how the questions are actually being asked from this particular area. So based on that particular analysis, definitely you can proceed your learning of this historiography session. So in your syllabus, you have that scope and importance of this historiography, objectivity and bias in history, recent trends in Indian history, meaning what different schools are there, right? Then beginning of historical writing, the early writing, Greek, Roman, church historiography, difference are there. Different periodical historiography methods or historical methods are there. Then Renaissance, 15th century onwards, and its impact on historical writing. Then postmodernism in history. These are some of the very important syllabus. I am not going to discuss any of the subject, but just to try to understand, guys. In this historiography, you should know some of the very basic concepts. Plus, you should know how the questions are being asked. If you are having that particular idea by this class at least, definitely you can proceed with this historiography and complete all subtopics, and you can score all the very important questions asking from this particular area for your UGC net examination. With just saying about this introduction or this syllabus in a brief, I'm just forwarding, in which I'm just showing some of the very, very important historiographical books. Like one, we have Ishreetharan. He is having one very important work called as a textbook of historiography, or otherwise a manual of historical research methodology. One of the authentic work by the historian Ishreetharan, a manual of historical research methodology. Then a textbook of historiography, 500 BC to AD 2000, meaning 24 years ago. So that is also by Ishreetharan. So this will be dealing with more theoretical part, and this will be more covering with the personalities or historians associated or lived in this particular field of historiography, or the greatest historians of the all time. So for Ishreetharan, you have two very, very important works. One is a manual of historic research methodology as well as a textbook of historiography. So guys, why I'm making this very slow, you know that? Because for your examination, one kind of information, one very important information for your learning, one type of question that can be asked, that is, you will be provided with name of the book, and you have to identify the author, A, B, C, D, or E sometimes. So the book will be given and you have to identify the author. So now just listen, now just read it again. a textbook of historiography 500 BC to AD 2000. You can expect such a question. That's why I'm saying each and every information I have added in this particular PPT. That is very important for your preparation. So one type of question can be this one. Otherwise, similarly, the book versus the author. Such question can be asked in a manner like correctly identify the correctly matched pair. One, as we mentioned, one is direct question A, B, C, D, E. Another method is correctly identify the correctly matched pair. And third method of question can be asked related to this book and author will be like match the pair. You'll be given with a particular box and you have to match accordingly. So for that, this information something very important. Okay, after learning this particular information and this particular topic, we have some other sources like R.G. Collingwood, something very important, and this person and his work were asked for this UGC examination before. So the work of R.G. Collingwood is the idea of history. So sometimes you'll get a question, as I said, one can be what? The direct question in which you can expect the idea of history is written by who? Second type, identify the correctly matched pair type of question. Third type of question, match, A, B, such boxes will be there, right? So the idea of history by R.G. Collingwood, something very important. Similarly, everybody does know about this work, E.H. Carr's What is History? And recently, this cancelled June examination. Hope you remember the 2024 cancelled June examination had one very important question based on what is history regarding the themes discussed in this particular text. So it is not necessary to understand and study the themes of each and every work that you are learning. But you know that regarding historiography, this person E.H. Carr is something very important and his work, What is History, is also very important. That's why there we can expect, or there that's why they're actually asked some question based on the themes from this textbook. So we can, after learning some of the very important topics, definitely you guys can understand, yeah, which personality or which books are something very, very important. Then you can go for further advanced learning, like understand the themes of that particular work. That's the next stage only, not now, but just to try to understand. Fine. So this is something very introduction regarding this particular thing. Guys, so far hope it is clear. So we had a small discussion about some of the very important sources as well as how the questions are being asked from this particular area. We have discussed three very important methods of question can be asked. And there is another fourth method, that is statement-based questions, and we'll be discussing such kind of questions or statements or themes later when we have such related contents as well in between. Okay. So guys, just tell me whether it is clear so far. Let me simply quickly go through in Malayalam. Okay. നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞത് ശ്രീധരൻ മേനോൻ എന്ന് പറയുന്നവരുടെ ബുക്കുകൾ എടുത്തിട്ട് നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു ഈ പുസ്തകങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങൾ പഠിച്ചു വെക്കേണ്ടതിന്റെ ഉദ്ദേശം ഇത്രയേ ഉള്ളൂ. 3 മെത്തേഡ്സിൽ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ചോദിക്കാം. ഒന്ന് ഡയറക്റ്റ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആയിരിക്കും, ബുക്ക് തന്നിട്ട് ഓഥർ ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യാം. രണ്ടാമത്തെ ടൈപ്പ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് എന്തായിരിക്കും, നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കുറച്ച് ഓപ്ഷൻ തന്നിട്ട് ഇത് കറക്റ്റ്ലി മാച്ച് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടെന്നുള്ളത് ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി. മൂന്നാമത്തത് ചേരുംപടി ചേർക്കുക എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഓപ്ഷൻ ആയിരിക്കും വരുന്നത്. ഇത് സാധാരണ ചോദിക്കുന്ന ഒരു മെത്തേഡ്. നാലാമത്തെ മെത്തേഡ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റ് വൈസ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആണ്. അപ്പൊ അത് നമുക്ക് പിന്നീട് ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്യാം. പിന്നെ അതിന്റെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ E.H. കാറിനെ പോലുള്ള ആൾക്കാരെ ഞാൻ ഡിസ്കസ് ചെയ്തത് എന്തായിരുന്നു, അങ്ങനത്തെ ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട ചില ആൾക്കാരുടെ പുസ്തകത്തെ തീംസ് ഐഡന്റിഫൈ ചെയ്യാനും സംടൈംസ് ചോദിക്കുന്നുള്ളൂ. ഇത്രയും കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുള്ളൂ. Is that clear, guys? Fine. So this is something very introduction. Now, guys, tell me, it's a high time for you. Just interact with me with this particular question. How do we know what happened in the past? How do we know that what all things happened in the past? How we are going to understand that? How we are going to know that, oh, that things happened in the past? Yes, we are knowing that. How we are actually going to know that such kind of information? There is our particular topic called as historiography. Because we can see sometimes we are getting many messages through WhatsApp. And we believe that, oh, it's happened there, right? That's not historiography. But if you are learning something very authentic regarding one particular incident in a different perspective, no problems. Maybe perspective will be different or opinions may be different, but they are having some very important sources, authentication, validation of certain points, and through that validation, they are going to substantiate their statement. Such one is called as what? Historiography. So that's where we are depending the historians to understand our past. Fine. So this is something very introduction regarding the historiography. Now, what is historiography? While you are discussing historiography, you should know that what is historiography. So historiography is simply what? The study of history writing. So you all the 40 students presenting in this particular live session are history students. And you are going to write one particular history of your locality or otherwise of your particular interested area. You are going to write like a diary. That's not a history, right? But there should be some kind of conditions, criteria, methods. That's why we are saying methodology, right? So after learning such kind of things, if you are going to write one history and apply that there, that is called as what? Historiography. So simply what is historiography? That is the study of history writing. And what's the significance? Historiography that examines how historians throughout history have studied and written about the past. So through historiography, we are going to understand that how one historian is going to write about the historical things. And similarly, it analyzes different methods they use. Like if you are going to, I'm going to write about something regarding this Indus Valley civilization, definitely there is no literary sources available. But we are depending on what major seals, major pottery things. By interpreting certain things from there, we are going to understand. So there we have different methods and we are depending many sources. And that definitely will be influencing interpretation. For an example, if I am getting a pot from Indus Valley civilization, and there is one particular animal like giraffe. So what will be my intention or what will be my thought or what will be my interpretation? That is something very simple, right? Yeah, I'll believe that Indus Valley people had some kind of information regarding giraffe. Even though giraffe cannot be found in Indian mainland as such, not endemic species. So that is my bias, my interpretation, right? So simply through historiography, we'll be able to identify how historians study the past, as well as we'll be able to analyze the methods, as well as interpret based on different sources. And essentially, it is history of history. So historiography or simply meaning what? History of history. That is historiography. Let me brief it in Malayalam, guys. നമ്മൾ ഇത്രേ പറഞ്ഞോളൂ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രാഫി എന്താന്നുള്ളത്. ഹിസ്റ്ററി എഴുത്ത് അതിനെ പഠിക്കുന്നതിനാണ് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രാഫി. അപ്പൊ ഒരാൾ ഹിസ്റ്ററി എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്, അയാളുടെ ചരിത്രത്തെ നമ്മൾ എന്ത് ചെയ്യണം? പഠിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി ശ്രമിക്കുകയാണ്. സോ ഒരു ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയൻ എങ്ങനെ എഴുതിയെന്നുള്ളത് പഠിക്കുകയാണ്. അയാൾ സ്വീകരിച്ച മെത്തഡോളജി എന്തൊക്കെയാണ്, അയാൾ എന്തൊക്കെ സോഴ്സസ് ഉപയോഗിച്ചു, ആ സോഴ്സസിന്റെ അടിസ്ഥാനത്തിൽ അയാളുടെ ഇന്റർപ്രിട്ടേഷൻ എങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ആയിരുന്നു, അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കാര്യത്തിന് നമ്മൾ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രാഫി എന്ന് പറയുന്ന ഒരു സിമ്പിൾ വേർഡ്സാണ് പറഞ്ഞത്. Dear students, is that clear? What is historiography? You got the simple meaning. It's simply the study of history writing. And we have some very important understanding that it will be helping to understand how historian use different methodologies, different sources to interpret and analyze certain events happen in the past. That is simply called as historiography. Is that clear? Is that clear? Waiting for a response. Yeah, I am getting only few responses. Why? Give me a response, guys, whether it is clear to you or not. Or if you have any doubt regarding the basic information that I'm saying, just ask me. Fine, fine. Now, just to try to understand this point also, something very important. If you are studying this historiography, this topic something has that much significance. Why, this significance of historiography itself says the subtopics of historiography. For an example, by learning this historiography, one will be able to understand the different perspectives. For an example, there are different schools of thought like Marxist historiography, nationalist historiography, colonial historiography, post-colonial historiography, such kind of things, right? That can be related to what? Indian history as well as world history, whatever it is. But we'll be applying the different perspectives in the case of Indian history. So this is something very important. Don't worry. Today we'll be having a detailed learning and understanding about the Marxist, nationalist, and colonial historiography today. Okay, as part of our today's live discussion. That is one very important point and one of the very important significance of historiography itself. Okay, now the second point is that the historiography or understanding historiography that will help us to have a critical analysis of sources. For an example that I mentioned earlier, that I got one particular pod from this Indus Valley region and I got one picture of giraffe as well. So I'll be thinking that I should make sure that this pottery belongs to the period of Indus Valley civilization. Or otherwise you think that this is something during the medieval times. If that pottery belongs to that medieval time, definitely we can see the presence of many travelers during the medieval period. So obviously there is a chance that the medieval travelers might have seen this giraffe and they are going to portray in one of the pottery. That can also be possible thing, right? And giraffe was found only in this one particular pottery only, not commonly everywhere. So there is some kind of not generalization is not possible, right? So there will be critical analysis of the sources. So we can see different archaeological findings, epigraphy, literature, and everything, every sources that we are referring for the understanding of one history that can be brought under certain criticism. For that, we should know historiography. So then and there will be studying something about the concept of bias, the concept of objectivity, the concept of subjectivity in history. Such kind of things will be learned while analyzing different sources or different perspective of historians. Some historians, they are focusing more on objective nature of historiography. And some people say objectivity cannot explain the historical situations. So there will be what? Subjective understanding. Objectivity means what? Something pakka related to that particular period and fact oriented and depends on this particular source only. But if you are having some subjectivity, we'll be trying to formulate different something more exaggerated than the historical thing. So there will be critical analysis of sources. So this is something very important regarding the second one. Now tackling historiographical debates. That is another very important point, something very important. For an example, different historians will be writing about different events. I'll be showing some of the very important points today. So I am a historian, think that I am a historian, and I am going to write something regarding the role of Subhash Chandra Bose. For an example, the role of Subhash Chandra Bose. And I said that if Indians actually followed Subhash Chandra Bose instead of Gandhi in the national movement, India might got independence even before the Second World War. That will be my statement. But at the same time, if one of you writing regarding the role of Subhash Chandra Bose, you are saying that is not possible, but because Subhash Chandra Bose had its own limitation, you are saying. So what we can see, there we can see different debate on something historical things. For an example, we had many debates in Indian history regarding the nature of the Mughal Empire, the character of Indian freedom struggle, such kind of things. As we had this particular example, role of Subhash Chandra Bose. So these are some of the very important significance that we get after learning historiography. So let me explain it in Malayalam very briefly, just to try to understand. Historiography ഏറ്റവും പ്രധാനപ്പെട്ട പ്രത്യേകതകൾ, അതിന്റെ സിഗ്നിഫിക്കൻസുകൾ ഇത് എന്തിനാണ് പറയുന്നത് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇത് പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് അതിന്റെ സബ് ടോപ്പിക്കുകളൂടെ മനസ്സിലാകുന്നുള്ള. ഒന്ന്, ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രഫി പഠിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് നമുക്ക് ഡിഫറെന്റ് പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ്സ്, ഡിഫറെന്റ് സ്കൂൾസ് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നത്. ലൈക്ക് മാർക്സിസ്റ്റ്, നാഷണലിസ്റ്റ്, കൊളോണിയൽ സ്കൂൾസ് ഓഫ് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രഫി. നമ്മൾ അത് കൂടുതൽ ഇന്ത്യൻ ആപ്ലിക്കേഷനിലായിരിക്കും കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ വേണ്ടി പോകുന്നത്. രണ്ടാമത്തത്, സോഴ്സുകൾ അവർ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയൻസ് സോഴ്സ് വെച്ചിട്ടാണല്ലോ ഹിസ്റ്ററി എഴുതുന്നത്. അപ്പൊ അതിന് നമുക്കൊരു ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ അനാലിസിസിലോട്ട് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ പറ്റുന്നുള്ള. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ നിങ്ങൾ ആലോചിച്ച് നോക്കിക്കേ, നമുക്ക് ഡിഫറെന്റ് ആർക്കിയോളജി സോഴ്സസ് ഉണ്ടാവും. ഞാൻ ജിറാഫിന്റെ പോർട്രേ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ, എപ്പിഗ്രാഫി ഉണ്ടാവും, കൊത്തി വെച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന ഇൻസ്ക്രിപ്ഷൻ പോലെ, ദെൻ ലിറ്ററേച്ചർ ഉണ്ടാവും. അപ്പൊ ഇതൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ക്രിട്ടിക്കലി വായിക്കാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അവിടെയൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് കുറച്ച് എക്സാജറേഷൻസ്, ഓർണമെന്റേഷൻസ് വരും എന്ന് തോന്നുവാണെങ്കിൽ, അതിനൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ക്രിട്ടിക്കൽ അനലൈസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റുന്നത് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രഫിയിലൂടെ ആയിരിക്കും. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ബയാസ് എന്താണ്, ഒബ്ജക്റ്റിവിറ്റി എന്താണ്, സബ്ജക്റ്റിവിറ്റി എന്താണെന്നുള്ള കോൺസെപ്റ്റുകൾ അറിഞ്ഞിരിക്കണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അറിയാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നുള്ളതാണ്. മൂന്നാമത് പറഞ്ഞത്, ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കലുള്ള പല ഡിബേറ്റുകളും നമ്മൾ അഡ്രസ് ചെയ്യാൻ വേണ്ടി ശ്രമിക്കും. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ, മുഗൾ എംപയറിന്റെ നേച്ചറുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട് പല ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയൻസിന് പല അഭിപ്രായമായിരിക്കും. ഫ്രീഡം സ്ട്രഗിൾ ഒരു എക്സാമ്പിൾ പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ ഞാൻ സുഭാഷ് ചന്ദ്രബോസിന്റെ ഒരു കഥ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് പറഞ്ഞു. എന്റെ പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ് എന്തായിരിക്കും, മറ്റൊരാളുടെ പെർസ്പെക്റ്റീവ് എന്തായിരിക്കും എന്നുള്ളത്. അങ്ങനെ പല കാര്യത്തിനും ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രഫി നമ്മളെ സഹായിക്കുന്നുള്ളതാണ്. സോ ഡിയർ സ്റ്റുഡൻസ്, വി വർ ഡിസ്കസിംഗ് അബൌട്ട് ദ സിഗ്നിഫിക്കൻസ് ഓഫ് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിയോഗ്രഫി. And while learning this significance of historiography, you will be able to understand some of the very important subtopics, like different schools of philosophy, different schools of historiography, then different sources and their critical versions, and the significance, especially like the historiographical debates. So you'll be having many historians about one particular topic. For example, the Mughal Empire. There we can see the presence of and the writings of many historians. Fine. So just try to understand, these are some of the very important significance. Is that clear, guys? Just tell me whether it is clear or not. If you have any doubt, just feel free to ask me. Fine. Now we are going to have, after discussing this basics of historiography for the last 20 minutes, now we are going to understand one very important topic in in-depth understanding. And while learning each and every topic, I'll be trying to explain how one question can be asked from that particular region, how you can expect more questions in the future. Okay. So we are discussing schools of Indian historiography. So as you say, Indian historiography, that will be dealing with what? Indian history. And when we say different schools, we have something as we mentioned just before. They are like what? Marxist historiography, nationalist historiography, colonial historiography, subaltern, then post-colonial. So we are having 5 schools of historiography here. So whenever we say Marxist historiography, just to try to listen, we'll be having one conceptual clarity first. Then after that, we'll be discussing some of the very important historians of this Marxist historiography and their contribution. So first, we should develop some of the very important contribution. So Marxism, this Marxist ideology developed after what? The rise of capitalism. So this Marxist historiography, they're focusing what? Their focus is that history that is driven by economic forces and class struggles. So they are having what? They are simply having the economic perspective of historical development. Okay. And as part of that, they focus on analyzing the relationship between different social classes like landlords, peasantry, bourgeois, proletariat. There are many social classes. And these Marxist historians are trying to understand how the relationship between the landlords and peasantry was. And bourgeois proletariat, how they approached this economic system. And this Marxist historiography trying to focus or trying to understand and analyze the historical evolution, historical things in the economic perspective. There will be many different people like you, me, and everywhere, many people will be there. And they are trying to understand the history of me and you and every people through our economic mode or economic relationship. That is basically the nature of Marxist historiography. Just to try to understand. Marxist historiography. Fine. So we'll be discussing some of the very important Marxist historians in India. We can discuss this Marxist historiography as part of our world historiography or world history itself, but not now. Now we'll be focusing on what Indian perspective only. Okay. Then comes nationalist historiography. So obviously, you know that something called as national movement, right? So it was anti-British. Simply, it was anti-British. So obviously, this nationalist historiography or that developed during the period of colonial era, and they emphasized on national unity. So the historians of this particular school will be trying to unify the historical elements or Indian traditions, identity, and the struggle for independence. And as part of that, they have what? The glorification of heroes and past. Glorification of events past. That's why we can see Chhatrapati Shivaji got more relevance during the freedom movement. Okay. And they had focus on India's rich cultural heritage and past achievements. That's why what we can see, British people were saying like Indians had no culture, no civilization. Thus, we are going to study more about Indus Valley tradition, and we are going to understand that one of the greatest civilization had existed in the world during the time of Bronze Age was one in India, that is Harappan civilization. Such India's rich cultural heritage and past achievements were given focus by nationalist historiography as a reaction against the colonial historiography. So the colonial historiography, that is simply the British historiography. So what will be their objective? Their objective will be what? To establish or to legitimize the British Raj. They're saying that only with the presence of the British, only with the arrival of the British, Indians got actually something more light in their life. They became more civilized. Till then, they were barbaric. They were uncivilized. Such statements were there. So the British people and the British historians were trying to legitimize the British colonial rule in India. And they have the viewpoint of colonizer. So they are colonizing. And they're often portraying Indians as backward nation in need of a civilization. You might have heard about something called as the white man's burden. Not man's burden, it's white man's burden. They're saying that they are white, we are black. That's why they're saying the white man. So they're having this idea called as white man's burden. And it's their duty to civilize us. So such colonial historiography also can be found. Fine. So try to understand Marxist historiography, nationalist, and colonial. Next one is subaltern. When these nationalist historians try to bring back the India's past glory, they forgot about these locals or local people or some vulnerable people, vulnerable group, like maybe the women, like maybe the peasants or tribals. So such people were brought into the light of historiography by these subaltern studies. So they gave voice to marginalized and subaltern groups like peasantry, women, religious minority, or Marxist historiography. And as part of this, what we can see, the peasant historiography, women historiography, the local community historiography, all got brought into light. Fine. As part of that, they use oral history and local records. Definitely, we can see what. Oh, just a sec, just a sec. Guys, just tell me whether it is clear now. My voice is clear or not. Maybe some kind of network fluctuation. Give me a response whether the voice is clear or not. Okay, fine. So I was telling guys about the subaltern studies. Subaltern meaning what? Something downtrodden session or marginalized session or a vulnerable group like peasantry, women and religious minorities and other communities like tribals and everyone who didn't get enough recognition in the traditional historiography. So they are the subaltern studies people. And for the subaltern learning, the historians using oral history and local records, definitely, because their history won't be in the mainstream of these documents, right? So they're having bottom-up approach. Bottom-up approach. So you can say nationalist historiography had top-down approach. Top-down approach. This is bottom-up from the local, from the ground level, development of historiography. Then post-colonial studies. Another thing, post-colonial studies. So you know something colonial. That will be up to 1947. Up to 1947, that is colonial historiography. But the post-colonial meaning, the post-1947, what will be? We are not talking about the British role, but we are saying about the long-term impact of the social, cultural, and political consequences of colonialism. We are discussing the impact of colonialism in a different manner. That is post-colonialist. So that is post-colonial studies. And that examined issues of power, politics, identity, representation in the post-colonial world. So when I say post-colonial world, India also part of that one, right? So we'll be discussing how this colonial administration, colonial impact, influence, all led for some kind of influence in the post-colonial period, affecting the different dimensions like political power, identity, representation, and everything. Fine. So dear students, just to try to understand, we had a simple discussion about the basic concepts regarding different schools of Indian historiography or related to Indian historiography. Marxist historiography, we mentioned the economic perspective. National historiography, glorifying India's past. Colonial historiography, legitimizing the British Raj. Subaltern studies, discussing about the subaltern or marginalized communities. Post-colonial studies, the consequences of colonialism. These are some of the very concepts that we have discussed so far. Guys, just read this one. I'll give you 2 minutes just to read this one and just to do let me know if you have any doubts regarding any of the concepts we mentioned today and now. If the discussion is clear, just give me a chat response that is clear. Or if you want further explanation or something, just do let me know with your queries through chat itself. Okay, fine, fine. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for your good response. Now let me discuss some of the very important historians. So dear students, we'll be discussing these two topics now. We'll be discussing 5 very important Marxist historians of India. 5 very important Marxist historians of India as 5 very important nationalist historians of India and their contributions. So we'll be discussing these two topics today because it's not possible to cover everything, as well as it's not advisable to teach and everything in a single day. Actually, that's gonna make you more saturated than easily understand this particular topic. So let me discuss this, some of the very important historians of this Marxist school. Marxist school. Okay. And we have the first and the forerunner and the foremost person and the historian, D.D. Kosambi. Definitely you might have heard about this person, D.D. Kosambi. And his full name is Damodar Dharmanand Kosambi. Passed away. Okay. But he is one of the greatest historians. And he even considered as a founding father of Marxist historiography in India. So that is a big point there. He is the person. Fine. And for your examination, dear students, focus on this particular point. For your examination, as I said before, definitely you can expect certain works related questions about these personalities. Today we'll be discussing 10 personalities, and all the 10 personalities are something very important. Your focus should be like their significant work. Something very important. That's why I'm saying it is not advisable to learn more, because that will make you more saturated. So just to try to understand, we have Damodar Dharmananda Kosambi, as simply called as D.D. Kosambi, one of the greatest historian and father of Marxist historiography in India. So definitely they'll be analyzing regarding through this economic perspective of historical development, right? They'll giving more focus to economic perspective. And here's some of the very important work: an introduction to the study of Indian history in their 1956. So is going to give what? Give an introduction to Indian history through Marxist perspective. Obviously, we'll be discussing some kind of economic discussions will be there, right? So such work one is an introduction to the study of Indian history. At the end of the discussion, I'll be giving one particular task. You can go for a tabulation. Like first, you can write the name of the author like D.D. Kosambi. Then you can mark like what? He's a Marxist historian here. Then some of the very important works like 1, 2, 3, you can give the number and just to try to make it in a tabulation form. So this tabulation will be helpful for a easy revision as well. You can make or you can learn accordingly. Fine. So that is one of the work, an introduction to the study of Indian history. Another one after 10 years, that is the Indian feudal state. Definitely you guys know, when we discuss about the feudalism in India, we can see many historians like D.D. Kosambi. Next one is R. Sharma. There are many historians discussing about this feudalism. And regarding this Indian feudalism, he is going to discuss about the nature of feudalism in India, and he proposed feudalism from below. There is one concept feudalism from above, another concept is feudalism from below. So he is discussing in the perspective of what? The serf or the peasant community, the peasants. In the perspective of serf and peasant, he is going to discuss the economic relation between the serf as well as their landlord. Such a work is Indian feudal state. This work is also something very important. And third work is the culture and the civilization of ancient India in historical outline. The culture and civilization of ancient India in historical outline. That discuss the social and economic structure of ancient India. So these three works are something very important. Guys, if possible, try to write the name of the work now itself, so that you can learn it now itself. Just to write it down, guys. Nothing. I'm waiting for your what? Your update. Like, just write down the name of these works. as a table now itself and try to learn now itself. That's why I was waiting for your response. Unfortunately, I got two other response like not hearing what happened. Thank you anyhow. Just tell me guys whether you are written or not. Okay, fine, fine. So it's something very, very important, guys. Never miss it. Know the person, know his school, as well as just to focus on the works. Okay, something very important. Now moving forward, Ram Sharan Sharma, that is R. Sharma simply. He also died. Ram Sharan Sharma. So he focused on the studying of social and economic formations in ancient and early medieval India. That's why when we are discussing D.D. Kosambi, we are discussing R. Sharma along with him because both had common topic of discussion. For example, you can see like Indian feudalism here, 1983 mein. Indian feudalism. And at the same time, look here, Indian feudal state, we mentioned about D.D. Kosambi. That's why. Okay. So we have some of the very important work like Indian feudalism that have some kind of debate on the nature of feudalism in India. Something very, very important. Okay. Fine. We'll be discussing more about the opinion by R. Sharma regarding feudalism when we discuss the particular topic feudalism as part of our Indian history. Now we have another work, aspects of political ideas and institutions in ancient India. So you can say like the political ideas and institutions in ancient India. That deals with some kind of political dealings like political kingship and everything, political structures, the nature of political administration. Such kind of things are discussed in this particular work, aspects of political ideas and institutions in ancient India. So one is this one, second one, Indian feudalism. Third one, perspectives in social and economic history of early India. So obviously, social and economic history, different perspectives regarding ancient India. So basically, I'll be discussing some kind of social stratification, social issues, land revenue system, economic history, and economic life in ancient India. That is the discussion of this particular topic. Okay, just to write the three important works, aspects of political ideas and institutions in ancient India, Indian feudalism, perspectives in social and economic history of India. These three works are something very important with respect to R. Sharma. Just let me know after writing this one so that you can learn now itself. Make it faster, guys. Make it faster. We have to discuss 8 more very important historians and their contributions like this one. Fine, fine. Now let me proceed. Bipan Chandra. So he also died. So he had, you know that Bipan Chandra is famous for discussing modern Indian history, right? Modern India. So He studied the rise of nationalism and Indian independence movement. As part of that, the first work is, the most important work is the rise of nationalism in India. So obviously, regarding the rise of nationalism in India, obviously they will be discussing what? 19th and early 20th century, rise of nationalism and nationalist movement. The rise of nationalism in India. Second one is in search of freedom. Sometimes we can expect such kind of questions. Say comprehensive history of Indian freedom struggle. Then India after independence. India after independence, the main author was Bipan Chandra itself. And we can see some other historians as well. That examines India's social and political and economic development in the post-independent history. So it has some kind of limited Marxist influence, but simply covering the post-independent history, that is India after independence. So just to try to understand these three works. Not only these works, we can see simply other works like Modern India, one of his very important work, but it's a simple one. You know, like India's struggle for independence is one of the co-author of that particular work. There are many other works, but just to try to understand, these three works are something very important. So just to write down these three works. Just to write it down very fastly. Thank you, Nadia. Okay, we're discussing another great person, Irfan Habib, still alive. Irfan Habib. So he focused on the medieval Indian history, particularly the agrarian system and social structure. Some of his very important works are the agrarian system of Mughal India, something very important, guys. Don't miss out. Then essays in Indian history, another one, and agrarian history of Mughal India. Again, here you can see agrarian system of Mughal India. Here you can see agrarian history of Mughal India. So revised one, right? Fine. Some of his very important works. Other than this one, we can see he wrote some other works like, other than this, he wrote some other work like medieval Indian history, such kind of things. But just to try to understand, these are something very specific and highly focused areas. Just write it down. Okay, fine. Now discussing another very important person contemporary to Irfan Habib. Same age of Irfan Habib. One of the greatest historian living today. That is none other than Romila Thapar. Romila Thapar. She studies about ancient Indian history, especially regarding the social structure, gender, and kinship system. We are discussing kinship here, not kingship. Kinship system, meaning what? Social relationship. So some of the very important works are like she also wrote one important work regarding ancient India. She also wrote one work regarding ancient India. But we have Ashoka and the decline of the Mauryas. One of the very important work, and we can see regarding the decline of the Mauryan Empire, she had one of the very important opinion like the vastness of the empire and the disintegration of the centralization features are some of the very important reason behind the decline of Mauryan Empire. That discussion was led by her or started by her in her particular work Ashoka and the decline of the Mauryas. Something very important. Similarly, another work, Ancient Indian Social History, some interpretations. So not this work, something very important. First one, something very, very important. Okay, after writing this, we are discussing, so far we are discussing 5 very important Marxist historians like D.D. Kosambi, R.S. Sharma, Bipan Chandra, Irfan Habib, and Romila Thapar. Now we are discussing some of the very important nationalist historians. When you say nationalist historian, we can see many historians actually. But we are discussing some of the national movement or national leaders who became historians. We are discussing only 5 here. Some of the national leaders who wrote something about India. Such one is R.G. Bandarkar from Pune. R.G. Bandarkar, Ramakrishna Gopal Bandarkar, or simply R.G. Bandarkar. So he was one of the very important personality of Pune Sarvajanika Sabha. You know that. And he studied ancient Indian history. And he emphasized India's glorious past. Definitely. Nationalist, yeah, definitely. So they'll be having this approach. And certain cultural achievements as well. So some of their works are early history of the Deccan. So he's giving more importance to the Deccani history, different Deccani kingdoms and their historical developments. Then second one, a peep into the early history of India. So something very important, a peep into the early history of India. So general introduction regarding ancient Indian history in the nationalist perspective, meaning some glorification will be there definitely. Then third one, something religious, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and minor religious systems. So that focus on the development of major Hindu denominations. Early history of India. Early history of Deccan. A peep into the early history of India. And some major Hindu denominations like Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and minor religious systems. Make it faster, guys. That is Ramakrishna Gopal Bandarkar. And we'll be discussing more nationalist historians or more works related to this national movement while we are discussing major freedom fighters and their contributions. So here we'll be having simply some kind of nationalist historians and their contributions now. Okay. So for further discussion, we have the most famous person, V.S. Smith or Vincent Arthur Smith. V.S. Smith, Vincent Arthur Smith. So he's a British historian and he was sympathetic to Indian nationalism. That's why he's going to become one of the nationalist historians. Though British, his work are aligned with the nationalist narrative. So one of his great work are regarding ancient and medieval Indian history, And his works are the early history of India, something very important. The early history of India. Akbar, the great Mughal king, Akbar. Another one is Ashoka, the Buddhist emperor of India. Not these three works, guys. One is the early history of India. Second one, Akbar, the great Mughal. Third one, Ashoka, the Buddhist emperor of India. Not these three works, guys, please. The early history of India, the great Mughal, that is Akbar, Ashoka, the Buddhist emperor of India. Moving forward, guys. Hermann Gustav Gotz. Hermann Gustav. Actually, he's a painter. The German historian plus one artworker. So Hermann Gustav Gotz, he visited India from Germany. And he was influenced by the nationalist movement. And he's going to write on India's cultural heritage, especially regarding Buddhist art and everything. In the 1939, he was appointed as one of the very important director of Baroda Museum and Picture Gallery. So by having some kind of influence and learning such kind of things, he is going to understand more about Indian art forms or Indian culture. Thus, he is going to write one work, that is the Art of India. So this work, the Art of India, is going to be a reflection of India's history from ancient to modern times in the form of art forms. So we had different kinds of art and art practices from ancient to modern times. Is going to have that history. And he also established one journal, that is the Bulletin of the Baroda State Museum and Picture Gallery in 1942. So just to try to understand Baroda Museum related to Hermann Gustav Gotz. He was appointed by this person, Sayajirao Gaikwad III. Now need to study this name, but just to try to understand, is related to art and is appointed in Baroda and is going to have one particular work, the Art of India at least. Just to focus on this writing, the Art of India. Fine. Simply just to try to understand his nature and contribution. That's enough. So far we have discussed R.J. Bandarkar, Vincent Smith, then Hermann Gustav Gotz. Now we have R.C. Dutt. You are very familiar with this particular name, R.C. Dutt. Ramesh Chandra Dutt. We are discussing about the early nationalist or early political leaders of freedom movement, right? And this R.C. Dutt was the president of INC in 1899, as well as he was admitted or joined into Indian civil service in 1871 as well. So he was something educated middle class person. You know that the contribution of educated middle class like R.C. Dutt, like Dadabhai Naoroji, all helped for the development of Indian nationalist movement by having their own contributions like the drain of wealth theory, right? And this person also contributed towards this drain of wealth. So his first book on the economic problems of the cultivators were The Peasantry of Bengal. So just to note this work, Peasantry of the Bengal, that was written in 1875. 1875, there we can see one very important work, The Peasantry of Bengal. Peasantry of Bengal, one very important work. Another works are The Economic History of India, in which what we can see, he is going to be critic of British economic policies. Also, he is going to give negative impacts of this drain wealth theory. So we know that the drain wealth theory started by Dadabhai Naoroji, but later added by R.C. Dutt through his one particular work, The Economic History of India. Then another work was England and India, that analyzing the relationship between these two countries and especially focusing on the exploitative nature of colonialism. So focus on these three works: Peasantry of Bengal, The Economic History of India, England and India. Something very, very important. Something very, very important, guys. Don't miss out. The Peasantry of Bengal, The Economic History of India, England and India. Finally, we have one more person to be discussed. That is Jadunal Sarkar. Jadunal Sarkar. And he focused on studying the Mughal history. Especially during the period of Aurangzeb and Akbar, he is going to have some kind of comparative study and things. And that's why he wrote one work, History of Aurangzeb, in 5 volumes. And another one is Mughal administration. Then India through ages. So India through ages from ancient India to Mughal period. So otherwise, just to focus on these 3 things, that is something very important: history of Aurangzeb, Mughal administration, then India through ages. Just to write down that one else. Is that clear, guys? Okay, fine. So dear students, by this, we have completed our today's particular discussion, in which we had discussion that what is historiography, what is the significance, and how you should approach for this particular topic. And as part of our discussion, we had one particular learning also, the Indian historiographical schools: Marxist, Nationalist, colonial, subaltern, and post-colonial. After that, we had a detailed discussion about some of the very important historians of this Marxist as well as nationalist historiography schools. So dear students, by this we should proceed accordingly and we should have a clear-cut learning process in the future. So we'll be covering rest of the things in our classroom itself. So hope you got a better idea regarding this particular discussion. Yes or no, guys? Give me a response. Yeah, okay, guys. Okay. Fine. Thank you, guys. That's all for today. Thank you for your response. Thank you. Thank you. Let me wind up our today's discussion. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Good night.